You guys are like an already canceled sitcom, you know that?
Exactly.
Live from the Willie Nelson and Friends Museum Showcase in Nashville, Tennessee. It's Music is Funny. Musicians talking to comedians about music and comedy. With your hosts, Raelyn Nelson and Jonathan Bright.
I'm still smoking, I'm so high, I keep talking, I'm drunk, but I'm still drinking too.
Welcome back to Music is Funny. I'm Raelyn Nelson.
And I'm Jonathan Bright from the Raelyn Nelson Band, back with another ridiculous and unnecessary
Gary Marino. Okay, so we start the podcast off by asking you, what's the first music you remember loving as a kid?
The very first.
Yeah. Won't surprise you, it was Kiss.
Here we go, Raelyn.
Yeah.
She hates
The
Kiss.
child of the 70s and 80s, but definitely in the late 70s. Yeah, it was my brother got me into it. And I grew up in Medford, Mass, guys, which is just north of Boston, which was an interesting place to live because it's known as Disco Medford.
Oh, wow.
And in the height of the disco craze, you know, Medford was a happening disco place. So I was stuck between that thing where I was into Kiss, but then like my sisters would pull me out on the dance floor and disco dance. And then my friends would beat me up. You know, it was interesting.
Yeah, from the Village People to Kiss.
How many sisters?
Yeah. What's that?
How many sisters?
Two sisters, yeah.
Older than you?
One's older, one's younger.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what kind of music was your mom and dad listening to?
Well, you know, the parents in those days, it was everything. It was definitely Willie, but it was all that parent music in the 70s, you know, AM,
What was your mom and
AM
dad?
Gold. It was the Man of La Mancha soundtrack next to Willie Nelson. It was all over the place.
Yeah, what about you, JB? I don't think I've ever asked you what
They
your mom and
weren't
dad
really-
were listening to.
They weren't huge music fans. When we moved to Nashville, I remember it was the Oak Ridge Boys. My dad loved Anne Murray for some reason because she sings
I
really
remember
well.
you said that,
He
yeah.
loves Anne Murray. He was into people that sing, and then he discovered Boys to Men at some point because they could sing.
Yeah.
He's a big singing guy, so he's got a great voice. He sings better than I do. Never
your
pursued
mom?
it. She doesn't care. Although she did have a bunch of 45s of just crazy stuff. So, but yeah, not around the house.
No?
Anyway, this is not about us.
I know, but I was just curious because he said parent music of the 70s, so I was just curious.
Yeah, it was the AM radio. It's whatever was on in
You're
the car.
probably around the same age as this guy.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure that.
She gets mad because I always say I'm 54 on this.
No,
Although,
he just says we're around the same age to every single comedian we talk to.
No, JB, we're about the same age. So
there
yeah,
we
we
go.
caught that.
Pipe down over
Gary
there.
did it for you.
Yeah, pipe down.
Okay, back to you. So, so Kiss really as a kid, and then high school era, still a kid.
Van Halen all the way. I jumped out of Kiss and right into Van Halen. The 80s would not have been the same without him. And but I was into all that stuff, you know, all that kind of rock and roll. But huge Van Halen, huge David Lee Roth.
Yeah. Well, we know you're a musician. When did you start? When did you start playing?
Right around the same time as I got into Kiss. My brother found a used pair of drums in somebody's trash, brought them home, and he was playing guitar. And we set him up in the garage, and I learned how to do a basic beat. So around 13 or 14, and then I had my own band in high school for a period of time called the Boston Baked Beings, Beings,
Cute.
which was a reference, you know, to the behavioral modification devices we were all using, not the beans. But so that was a lot of fun. And then I got out of it, guys. I went the other way, got into lacrosse and playing sports, and could not find the right people to get in the band, could not find the right group of people. So I sort of gave up, and it literally didn't play for 20 years until I started World Gone Crazy.
I'm still looking for the right people to play with. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
The right.
Maybe the girl should do stand up. I think we can agree.
Yeah. Well,
I've done it twice.
I heard. No, actually, Rick Adana told me you did pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good. Now she's
Pretty good.
she's running bits on me. Like she'll start telling me a story and go, so, and then blah, blah, blah. And I'll just stop and go, wait, are you running a bit on me? How dare you? Then of course I
that
punch
can
him up.
actually drive you crazy.
You
You're
do.
right.
I punch him up and make him funny. So
You make them.
Yeah.
Well, anyway. Yeah, JB's going to do some stand-up comedy soon, aren't you?
Nah.
Really?
No.
You're
Yeah, he's
saying no,
working-
but you're saying yes.
He's working on his 5 minutes.
I could. Yeah. Anyway. So
He doesn't want to go there.
so when you quit playing music, like where did comedy get in? Is that after like strictly with
No, so I went to college and I went to work in radio.
Okay.
So I love music is my first love more than even comedy. So I went to work at a big station here in Boston called Kiss 108, which was one of the top 5 stations in the country. And that was an invitation to the rock and roll high life because it was Hollywood East. You know, we had, you name it, we had them into that station. Every musician, every actor. Monday, it would be the Miami Vice guys. Tuesday, it would be Milli Vanilli. I mean, it was all over the place. And so I had a good run there. And comedy came after that, actually. Just started as a door guy after my radio career got finished, as we say. And
Where, a door guy where?
this is funny. There was a motorless barge in Boston Harbor called Lightship's Comedy Deck. It probably sat about 60, 70 people. And it was just a barge in Boston Harbor. And that was my first real exposure to seeing like comedy on a regular basis.
that was back when the boom was happening though, right? Around that time?
Well, there's been a couple booms, you're right. But the initial boom was really 80s, and then it kind of quieted down. And so now I'm into that early 90s thing where it's starting to go up again, you know? And then you're right, there was a boom in the 90s as well, but it was just in front of that.
Who were the comedians in Boston at the time when you were doing the door?
Well, I worked with Dane Cook right out of high school when he was 18, when he was a puppy.
Yeah.
Patrice O'Neil, those guys were all there. Bob Marley, not the dead reggae star, the comedian was that part of that. Bill Burr was part of that generation. And then like a lot of the dinosaurs who never left Boston were still kicking around too. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like the next generation meets the older generation.
Sure. Was it still, from everybody we've talked to, the Boston comedy scene, when you're coming up through there, it's pretty tough. You got to have your shit together if you're coming up through Boston.
Yeah. I never realized it, guys, until I spent a lot of time down in the South and in different parts of the country. Then you come back here and you realize there's a tension and an edginess that exists in this neck of the woods that exists nowhere else in the country. And it does make for a great comedy scene. Not always easy to live in, though.
Right. I can
Yeah.
imagine. But I would imagine you get spoiled with comedy there, especially during that era. Much like us here, I took for granted 30 years about musicians and just there being players everywhere. And then you go out to other places, even New York and Los Angeles, there's no place that's packed with players like Nashville. And it's been that way for at least 30 years, just tons, everybody plays. And then probably the same thing with comedy. You just get, there's a excellence that you get used to of musicianship that you leave town and you're like, wow, we got something special. And I'm sure it's the same with comedy.
It is. And the audience here you're right. The audiences here are conditioned to it. They're used to it. And they have big radar for like, who are these guys on this show, or who are these girls on this show? And do I know them? And are they any good? Like they don't roll with shit. They want to make sure before they buy the ticket, these are good comics.
Right.
Yeah. I have a weird Boston story because we haven't played there yet, right? We haven't played in Boston.
Not yet.
So the only time I've ever been, I was 9 years old. My stepdad had a business trip there. So my mom and myself and my little brother went along with him. And we're in Boston Market area. I'm sitting there
The
with
restaurant? Just kidding. Carry on.
maybe, I don't know. Is there a Boston Market in the Boston Market?
Probably not.
No? Okay. Is
There
there?
is,
I don't know.
actually.
Yeah, there is.
Oh, there you go.
So we're sitting there, and I'm sitting with my stepdad, and my mom and little brother are off. And this lady walks up to us, and she says to my stepdad, "What nationality is she?" Talking about me. And my stepdad said, "She's American." And she was like, "No, is she Italian? or is she, where is she from? And my stepdad said, she's from here. She's American. And the lady said, you ain't nothing but a bunch of cockroaches, and walked away.
Really?
So that's what I remember from being in Boston.
And was she a Bostonian, do you think?
I have no idea. I was 9 years old, but I mean, that story's been told a lot in our family over the years because it's just so bizarre, right? Just because I wasn't.
Do you identify as a cockroach?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting to is I am a cockroach.
And this was without incident, Raelyn?
Yeah, I was just sitting there.
Are you sure your
I was
stepfather
probably
wasn't
doing
being
cartwils, trying to get attention.
Your stepfather wasn't being a dick to somebody that you just didn't recognize?
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
It does seem
Welcome to Boston. Welcome to Boston.
Has anybody ever called you a cockroach there? Is that a norm? Is that like a Boston?
I've been called a lot of stuff, but never cockroach, no.
It's mild.
I'll never forget the first night I was working in that comedy club. When I was a doorman, I was outside, which is what doormen do. And one of the comics walked out and he goes, hey, the score of like the Giants game? And I said, well, no, I'm out here. And he goes, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you had a penis. Welcome to Boston, ladies and gentlemen.
So how long were you working the door at that spot? I mean, is it like the Comedy Store where you can work there and work your way into the club to eventually do comedy?
Yeah, what happened was that club eventually went belly up, but the guy who was running it opened a much bigger room up in Andover, Mass, which is north of Boston. And that was a 300-seater that rocked for the remainder of the decade. It was called Comedy 93. It was called Comedy 93. It was on Route 93, which was creatively named. And so I went on to be the assistant manager there with another guy and, just started to get into the scene from there. But I was not a performer, guys. I was eventually I left the club scene and I started my own management and agents company. And I was a very content behind the scenes guy. I had no desire to do stand up or to be a performer. Even as music, for many years, very happy to be a behind the scenes guy. I sort of backed in later in life when I put this show World Gone Crazy together. I came up with the idea and I was auditioning the musicians and I was even auditioning drummers at one point. And every drummer that came in were fantastic drummers. And then I realized this show doesn't require a fantastic drummer. It requires a funny drummer. Right. And I was having trouble, believe it or not, finding that. So I decided to jump in and begin performing. And a big part of our show is stand up. We set up every song parody with stand up. We come out of every, parody with follow up, with what you call a callback. So I started doing a lot of stand up within the confines of this comedy band. And then in the last 3 or 4 years have just started doing stand up, like with Rick Adonna touring the panhandle of Florida up and down in the dead of winter. Yeah.
Nice.
That's a good spot to be in the dead of winter.
Yeah. But I guess what I'm saying, I really backed in. I had kind of a unique journey from, behind the scenes producer to performer. And I love it because I feel like, if you're going to do the same job for a lot of years, and I've been at this now almost 30 years, you might as well keep it interesting and challenge yourself. Yeah. I always knew I could do stand up. I just didn't have it in here.
So who told you? Did Mark Riccadonna do it? Did he was like, dude, just come on, you should do stand up? Or were you like, no, I know I can do this?
It wasn't Mark. It was I got hired for a while. I had a nonprofit that worked with kids in a children's wellness nonprofit.
Okay.
And Blue Cross Blue Shield was our sponsor. And they hired me for 200 keynote speeches across the country.
Wow.
200. And so I always knew that as a speaker that you start out with humor to get the crowd on your side. So I wrote about 10, 15 minutes of stand up for all these speeches. And that's where I started to get the bug and realized, actually, I could do stand up. You know what I mean?
Did they laugh? They laughed?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a trip because that's basically like in a roundabout way, hitting the road for 200 dates. You get used to being up in front of people. And then I'm sure you were running routines and keeping and tossing out stuff and keeping stuff the whole time?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And it was 200 over the course of 5 years. It wasn't like, went out for a whole year, but that's still a lot of dates.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
so I brought that to World Gone Crazy, more or less. I already had the ability to do stand up,
So what kind of a pain in the ass is it to work with comedians and set up comedy shows? I can't imagine. I always think about club owners working with musicians and dealing with all us idiots. Like, all of us are slightly unhinged. It must be interesting and frustrating as hell at points too.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's very challenging. I'm trying to think of I think probably musicians are still easier.
Yeah.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. Well, you see, stand up is a solo journey, right? Like they don't write together, they don't collaborate together, whereas musicians do. And so you guys are much more open to taking input, from people than comics are. So there's that. And then there's, it's true what they say. I mean, it's the tears of a clown. Most comics who come into my office over the years, the first question is, how was the show this weekend? And the second question is, tell me about your childhood.
So
when you find a good egg like Rick Adani, you stick with him, JB. That's all I'm saying.
I understand. It's like finding a great drummer. You hold on to him like grim death because they're few and far between.
Exactly.
Should the name of this podcast be Drummers Aren't Funny?
That's not cool. So so you didn't do stand up before you started the band. You were just
stand up as a speaker, but not,
right.
You're right, not stand up. Yeah.
So what gave you the impetus and are the other band members, when you were auditioning them, was being funny a prerequisite, or were you going to handle the jokes and let everybody else just play?
Yeah. Well, the way I got into it, just to jump a little bit in front, was back then when I was a door guy and then a manager of a club. There were these Boston comics who would do music, in their stand-up sets. So they'd come out and they'd do 25 minutes of brilliant, like DJ Hazard is a great example. He was a legendary Boston comic. He would come out, do 25 minutes of brilliant stand-up, and then reach behind him and grab the electric. And next thing you know, it was a rock show. And I loved it. And he'd do brilliant musical comedy, mostly originals, but he'd get the crowd singing along and the lighters. And as a music guy, I dug that you could turn a comedy club into an end on that booming rock note. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he and others were really my inspiration to put together the comedy band. The initial idea was to grab 4 of those people, right? So 4 musical comedians,
right?
Put them in a band. And I learned very shortly, going back to your last question about how hard is it to deal with these friggin' people. First of all, they don't collaborate. Secondly, they all have their own schedules and their own careers. So, try to book a date, Raelyn, right? With 4 different people, and one's in Tennessee this weekend, the other's at a pizza joint on the North Shore, and one's in a Chinese joint in Rhode Island. I mean, you have to pay them enough to make it worth their while to get out of a whole weekend to stand up. You see where I'm going?
Oh, yeah.
So I gave up on that idea of a comedy band made up of 4 comedians. And then I said, I'm going to find musicians with comic ability. And that's when things kicked into gear and got good, because you guys do have great senses of humor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You do.
When you get told no as often as you do as a musician, you develop a sense of humor. You go insane or quit, one or the other.
Yeah. Look at your music videos. Look at the skits and stuff you do, in the lead up to your music videos. That's comedy, So you guys could totally be in World Gone Crazy.
Well, we just played an acoustic show last weekend,
couple
weekends ago in Memphis, and it was just she and I, and it literally half of it was jokes. At least half. We just started.
We wrote down a
couple beers and then just started telling jokes, and then like, oh shit, we should probably play a song now. We would just keep talking as long as they were laughing. Like, all right, it's dying down a little bit.
We didn't even get through our list of songs to play. We looked down and we're like, oh shit, we have like 5 minutes.
Isn't that great though? I mean,
yes.
So you guys know this. There's so many brilliant musicians out there. What really sets one aside from the other is when you can pop it with your personality. I was in Central Park last weekend. I took my kid to see Billy Joel at the Garden. And the next day, which was Sunday, I'm walking through Central Park alone, and I come across this guy with an acoustic. And he's very talented, very gifted singer and guitarist. His name was David Ippolito. And he's holding court next to the lake there in Central Park. And it's what we do in World Gone Crazy. I mean, it's jokes. He's messing with the crowd. There's people out in boats, and he's got them playing the drums to Jack and Diane. And to me, that's wonderful. Like, we all love when your favorite rock star has a sense of humor on stage. And by the same token, we love it when a comedian can whip out a guitar and really play. So what I tried to do with World Gone Crazy is capture that in a bottle.
Yeah. Well, like you're a Van Halen fan, and I've said it on many podcasts. David Lee Roth, one of the funniest guys ever in rock and roll. He would do it in between. I was like, it's like he's working the Catskills in between songs. Hilarious guy.
He was a huge inspiration to me. And I actually got to do a little bit of work with him a few years ago. But growing up as like a 13-year-old, I went to that, to the Garden every summer to see the Women and Children First tour, the Fair Warning tour. And it was the first time I said, wow, rock stars can be really funny. He was a comedian. He was cracking us up. And then he'd go on the local radio and promote the show. He'd be funny on that. And, I got to finally thank him about 15 years ago when I met him, and he was a huge inspiration for World Gone Crazy.
And he's done a lot more than just singing Van Halen too. When you read his autobiography or whatever, he's a very interesting, wild dude.
He was an EMT at the time that I worked with him. I did some consulting when he was doing the test run to take over Howard Stern's show. Yeah. You remember how well that went?
Yeah, a few weeks, but yeah.
A few months, but I was in the running to do the show. They weren't sure if they were going to go local radio again when Howard left, or if they were going to go with 3 or 4 different personalities. So I put together a pilot for them that they had asked me to do called Morning Breath Radio, which they loved. This is CBS local in Boston. And I got the call. They said, yeah, we love your show, but we're not going to go with you because David Lee Roth's going to do the morning show. And I said, well, I could lose to that guy. I'm happy with that. I said, just one thing though. I said, one thing. He's a rock star. Don't give him 100% creative control. Put a good team around him like Howard has. A couple months later, he goes on Howard Stern's show, announces he's got the gig. And what does he say? And they gave me 100% control.
Oh.
Didn't quite last as long as Howard.
No, but yeah, that type of humor. Yeah, I love humor with my rock and roll. I love it.
All right. So you get the band started. Now, did you know these people that are in the band before, or just strictly through auditioning?
No, one of them was someone I had been an agent for, who did like rapid fire song parodies to tracks at the end of, like, you do like 6 minutes of tracks. The rest of them I didn't know. It was all through auditions. Yeah.
Oh, right on. So Did you have a plan? Did you have a gig or anything when you set this up, or is like, I'm going to put together a band and I'm going to see if I can figure out how to make it happen?
Did you post it on Facebook or something, or did you just like the newspaper? How did you?
Well, we were writing the show for one thing. We're writing the show is rapid fire song parodies, fake commercials. We do like a fake Cialis commercial.
I love fake commercials.
It's all. So we were writing the show, and while we were writing it, we were putting ads on like the local music, online forums looking for people. So, and having people come in and audition. And look, the truth is, it took a few lineups before it worked. It's not easy to take musicians and throw them into comedy, with no experience. But eventually I found people who were just naturals.
Hell, it's not easy to get 4 musicians and throw them into a band and make it last, much less get them doing comedy too.
I just had comedian Kevin Flynn, who runs the Nantucket Comedy Festival. I remember he said to me, he said, wow, yeah, God bless you. He goes, as if comedians aren't hard enough to work with. How do you get 4 comics into a band and manage that? I'm not going to sugarcoat it, guys. It's not easy, because it's the same dynamics as a band. It's everything you guys go through behind the scenes. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, it's a show. I consider World Gone Crazy really more of a show than a band, but it's the same band dynamics, and whose GPS isn't working and who went north when they should have gone south and who forgot their guitar strap. And I'm breaking into some electric closet somewhere trying to create a guitar strap.
Yeah, and everybody always asks her, like, so what do you guys talk about, like, in the van when you're driving to Texas? And I'm like, we don't. Like, what do you mean you don't? I'm like, we spend so much time around each other that, I mean, there's no small talk in the van. If there's something to be said, the conversation is, do you want to listen to X podcast or you want to listen to this stand up? And then,
Are you hungry? I gotta pee.
Yeah, that's it.
Right.
Yeah.
See, we don't travel together for that reason. Everybody gets in the car and it's unspoken. Yeah, I need my alone time before I get with you guys.
Yeah. We
Right.
love hotel time. That's our, when we have alone hotel time, that's nice.
Yeah.
But we're all
hardest
pretty
thing-
respectful about
Yeah, I mean, we get along fine. It's just when you get,
except when I'm on my period. We all fight. We all fight when I'm on my period.
That's true. We all get synced up in the van.
Do you know her cycle by now, JB?
Yeah.
Well, I don't really know it I'm terrible with chronological order, but I can just see it in her eye when she was like, here we go. You can just see this change in her expression. Like, yeah,
It's the devil coming out.
here we go.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true. Hey, do you guys all write the songs together? I don't remember if you covered that yet.
Yeah, no. For the last 10 years, I've been the main writer, and occasionally, again, we're into the fifth lineup now. World Gone Crazy. I've had 5 lineups.
Hey, we've had 13 drummers, so you know.
See, drummers aren't funny. Go ahead.
Occasionally, we've had 2 female singers. One who did write some pretty good song parodies. Another who didn't, but she took and did what I wrote. And then I've had I've had a couple of guitarists who could write, and then others who couldn't. So it all depends on who's in the band at one time. Right now, I have my guitarist can write, and so we collaborate a lot together.
Now you say it's like a show. And you've been doing it? What do you say, 4 or 5 years?
Actually, 9 years now.
9 years.
Jason.
So do you turn the show over as like every year, like not a new hour, but are you constantly churning out new parodies or whatever just to keep up and have new fresh stuff coming out?
Well, when a show named World Gone Crazy, it writes itself, right? I mean, you can rip it from the headlines. So I do try to keep it current, but no, I would say 80% of the show is it's like stand-up comedy. You stick with the jokes that work every time.
Yeah.
Sure.
So some of the stuff that a lot of the stuff that we've been doing, even stuff I didn't write, that we've been doing since the beginning of the show. Yeah.
And with parodies, you don't have to deal with copyright issues or anything, right?
No, not it's covered under comedy laws and all that kind of, parody laws, but we don't even do full songs, guys. It's rapid fire because the goal is not to be Weird Al. Okay. We call it stand up with a rock and roll soundtrack. Well, what's so funny? You Weird Al fans?
I am a big Weird Al fan.
I'm not knocking him. He's had a brilliant career. But think about this, Raelyn, in the context of
look, she hates Kiss and likes Weird Al, so just you can continue on.
Go ahead.
You guys are cute. You guys are like an already canceled sitcom. You know that?
Exactly.
You're very funny, but it didn't make it past the focus groups.
Yeah, exactly. Didn't work in the Midwest.
Thanks.
No, but think about this, Raelyn, all right? If you try to do the Weird Al thing in the context of a comedy club or the kind of venues I do, which is theaters and places, the crowd's going to be sitting there going, oh yeah, this is amusing. I think he's singing about taxes. You can't do that. They're coming for a comedy show at the end of the day. So it has to be rapid fire.
Right.
So the way we do it is we call it the quick hits. The verse is your setup. The chorus is your punchline. Boom, get the laugh. You're right on to the next one. So we do Toto's Rosanna, only it's Viagra. Okay. Soon as we go Viagra, boom, right on to the next one. Stairway to 7-Eleven, boom, boom, boom. It's rapid fire.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So when you guys
have to do it.
Yeah. How do you guys book shows? Do you do comedy clubs or is it more just clubs and theaters and stuff like that? Because I know some comics are not big fans of following or having a musical act on the stage.
Absolutely. even the guys I was telling you about that inspired me, you know, when they would pull their guitars out and do music and then somebody had to follow that, they hated it. So I knew that was going to be a challenge going into it. I knew, you're right. Not only do most comics not want to follow a music act, they consider you a complete hack for doing musical comedy.
Yep.
Yeah. Which I took on as a challenge. I knew they were going to be taking an axe to me when I put the show together. My goal was I'm going to prove to them that live rock and roll can work in a comedy setting. You know what I mean? And how do you do that? You got to deliver the same laughs that a great stand-up would. And we do, you know, it wasn't instant. It took a lot of working on the show. But to answer your question about comedy clubs, most clubs aren't set up for a full band.
Right. That's what I was thinking. They've got basically one microphone and a tiny stage.
Yeah. Yeah. And we do go out as a duo. We go out as a trio or a 4-piece. It all depends because people aren't available. And, you know, so, I mean, I've done this show with a tambourine and an acoustic guitar.
Yeah, there you go. Depends on what the guarantee is.
Yeah. But to answer your question, we've done very few comedy clubs. I never went after the comedy clubs because A, I knew the other comics would hate it. And B, I knew that they weren't set up for it. So we do theaters. We do a lot of hotels and resorts.
Oh,
Which have nice function rooms.
Those are nice too, because you got a place to stay and it's usually a pretty nice paycheck when you get with one of those things.
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of them, sometimes they buy the show. Sometimes we enter into door deals. And, you know, by the time the bell rings at showtime, I'm usually pretty happy, you know. I'm also, by the time the show bell rings, I'm toast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's that producer performer thing is a tough thing to do. You know, I always say to my musicians, I go, I wish I could do what you do. I wish I could show up. And the only goal I had was to be great on stage and perform. I'm there doing, you know, I'm getting everybody's hotel rooms, I'm getting the meals, I'm producing, I'm promoting, I'm doing interviews. I'm there for the setup of the stage, the lighting, the sound. I'm working with the bartender. I'm telling you, by the time I step foot on stage, I'm toast. And then I have to be good.
Yeah, you are preaching to the choir because we do the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, we generally travel just the four of us. But
JB and I are doing everything, you know, and thank God JB's helping because I couldn't do it all on my own.
But you get there, you're setting up merch, you're doing all of that kind of stuff. And it would be nice to be a bass player where you just hop in the van and what time do we play? I'm going to kick ass. And then,
No.
Nope.
Every once in a while, we'll get a show that will buy us outright. And I don't have to do anything. Just show up and be what you guys, you know, get up and be a funny musician. And I love that.
Yeah, those are the festival shows for us. You get there and they're generally running real tight schedules and you just pop up there, plug in, play for 45 minutes, split, feed you, and got a nice place to stay. Festivals are like that for sure.
Yeah, that's our musicians' main goal now is just to get into the festival circuit.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. We're going to get you guys up to Boston. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we were supposed to go this year, but Raelyn won't go because she's afraid she'll be called a cockroach.
I'm going to make sure I remember that when you come up. You know, I'm going to yell that from the audience. Yeah, you cockroaches.
And then I could tell the story. Yes. I love it.
Yeah. Boston had a great punk rock scene too back in the early 80s and late.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You're right.
There.
Well, everybody went there. I mean, they had their own bands, but, you know, the Replacements and Who's Could Do and all those people were close, and Boston they were coming through them.
Yeah. It's a great music scene here too. I mean, it's, you know, it kind of has gone through some dry spells here and there, but, you know, at the end of the day, when you look at the bands that came out of here, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is for sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, it's funny we were talking about that, how comedy has booms and busts, and I guess genres of music have that. But there's never been a year where people just go, music's just not very big this year. There's always some kind of music that's big, you know?
Yeah. What did you guys do during the pandemic to keep yourselves busy?
This is how this all started.
Yeah.
Is that right?
We had nothing to do, and we listened to comedy podcasts and stand up all the time. We can't agree with each other on what to listen to as a band. Sometimes we'll play the Spotify roulette where everybody gets to take a tap at the phone and listen to them, but that's usually after gigs, after a few beers. But on those long hours, we would kill it by listening to podcasts. And we were talking like, you know, we're not allowed to tour and none of them are allowed to tour. Maybe we could talk somebody into coming and talking to us.
So we
That's
reached out to Doug Stanhope first, and he did it. And then once you get Doug Stanhope on board, then you can pretty much get a lot of other.
Yeah, we had a lot of early people on going, well, I saw that Stanhope, but they didn't even see the episode, didn't do any research. So just, I saw Stanhope was on, so I'm like, yeah, sure, I'm in.
And then a lot of them said that they called Doug, and he was like, yeah, do it. They're cool. So he was and by the way, he 100% did it because of my grandpa being Willie Nelson. Remember,
Oh, for sure. He made sure to say that. He's like, oh, 100%. That's the reason why I did this, because you're Willie Nelson's granddaughter. But I'm having fun.
That's funny. Well, hey, listen, your grandpa is certainly great, but I, as far as I'm concerned, 3 seconds into Weed and Whiskey, you're not just the granddaughter anymore. You guys are the real deal.
Thank
and I
you.
mean that.
I appreciate that.
I don't think he's talking about the song. I think he's talking about 3 minutes into smoking weed and drinking whiskey. Tells and like, hey, I got some here. No, man, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
When's the first time you remember hearing about my grandpa? And like, what's your first Papa Willie experience?
So, as I said, child of the 70s, very young in the 70s, but Saturday was cleaning day around the Marino house.
Yeah.
You guys have those?
Oh, yeah.
Where the whole family Brady bunched it and we're cleaning everything together. And so my parents would have the stereo on, and so he would come on, and we all got hooked on it. What I remember being really cool though about your papa was when MTV came out, and all of a sudden Willie was popping up on that in between all these bands that we were into, your Van Halens and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I just thought that was so cool, like that this. He made it, as you know, later in life. Well, how old was he? Late 40s?
Yeah, he was 43 when he made it big.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So he had a lot of juice in him, in the 80s, and moving forward. So I remember seeing him slowly making his way into MTV, doing Farm Aid and all that stuff, and thinking, how cool is this? You got, Willie Nelson next to all the newer acts and stuff. I'll tell you, I wrote a book called Big and Tall Chronicles, which is kind of growing up in an Italian family up here in Boston, and how we overdid it with the food and stuff. And I had a chapter called To All the Girls I've Loved Before Who Wish I Hit the Treadmill More. So I was very inspired by him. Yeah.
JB and I wrote a song. We did oh shit, what's his name? Fuck, why can't
Josh
I-
Wolf?
Thank you. Josh Wolf did some parody songs at his shows here in Nashville when he lived here. They don't live here anymore. Him and Beth moved to Vegas, but invited JB and I down a couple times, and we parodied a song. We parodied On the Road Again.
Oh, nice.
To On the Pole Again. And it was our COVID song about how I had to get on the pole again because
We can't play music.
we can't play music right now.
It wasn't bad.
Yeah, we did pretty. Yeah, we did. But it
That's
was the
fun.
whole song, though. We definitely, you know,
we did. It wasn't
Weird
quick
Al
hit.
it.
We were Weird Al for it. Might even made that comment before we started, but
And did you play it? Did you play it for Papa Willie?
No. I don't want him to know about it. Sorry, I will not be sending him your podcast, so he will not be.
No.
I'm
But
kidding.
even like, to get back to like his influence on me, even like recently, we did a show at a place called The Warehouse, right? It's WHERE, just north of Springfield, Mass. And The Warehouse was basically, this guy collected all these antiques, all kinds of crazy stuff, antique phone booths and covered wagons hanging from the ceiling. And the whole place was just filled with tents and antiques. And
Cool.
and it was cool though, like everything was suspended from the ceiling around you.
The
And I
Cracker
came
Barrel.
on stage I said to the crowd, I said, "Well, I feel like I'm playing in Willie Nelson's living room."
That is what it's like.
what kind of drums? What kind of drums you play?
Right behind me there, John.
See a floor
JP.
tom over there. Oh, I got a cocktail kit. Nice.
I used to play a stand-up, a sit-down kit, which was I've had a bunch of different kits over the years, but at a certain point, in the Catholic religion, we call them Catholic stenics. You're sitting up, you're nailing, you're sitting up, you're nailing, you're getting up, you're nailing. That's the kit for World Gone Crazy, is to have a stand-up kit, because otherwise, if I'm setting up every song parody and I'm doing stand-up, you're getting up and down for the whole night.
Yeah.
Have you ever done like that one man band outfit where you're like,
Bass drum and in between the legs.
and you bang your knees together for the cymbals? I think we should, as a band, we should get that for him for his birthday or something.
The one man band thing. Yeah. And then if you just take, you don't need to fire the band.
No.
He wants to turn me into a clown show now. Is this it, Raelyn?
We're going to get you a pretty red nose and a ukulele and
For my entertainment.
Do you want the monkey with the cymbals doing it? Hey, would you guys mind real quick? You're not going to believe this. I'm in my my office, right?
Yeah.
And my cat, you know how like you have the door levers, right? Like the
yeah,
metal
yeah.
door
Yeah.
push down. He hits that with his paw, and it sounds like he's knocking.
Oh, so he wants in.
I'm trying to talk to you guys, and the cat is literally knocking on the door. Would you mind if I just let him in?
Oh, absolutely.
Please
let
let
him
the cat in.
in. Ooh, let the cats in.
Come on, Moji. Come on. You are a giant pain. There he is. Here's Moji.
Look at him.
Ah,
Moji?
Mojo.
Mojo. Mojo Nixon.
That's it.
Oh,
My kid wanted a dog, and we went to the rescue, and then we plea bargained down to second-degree involuntary mojo. Because I'm traveling so much. How much money am I going to spend on a dog kennel, right?
Not to mention, dude, how expensive is it to travel now? We were like, when we got out, book all these shows 8 months ago, 12 months ago, and you get out and you're like, the bottom line is not adding up to what that's right. Gas is twice as expensive. Flights, forget about it.
because of fuel too, right? Like it's
Or they'll just cancel them too. They're just canceling flights right and left.
yeah.
We're doing in LA. We're doing some shows in LA in October. Actually, Riccadonna is going to be with me, and I just asked one of the resorts. I said, "Can we, can we up the contract just to cover the gas and flights and all that?"
Yeah.
Yeah,
Bad.
trying to do some of that. Yeah, it really hits home when you start.
Well, yeah, because the thing is, we already got to a place where we weren't paying to play anymore.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we were paying to play. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
We can't be going backwards here.
It's our whole guarantee in flights. Hold on, we can't do that.
Wait a minute. Yeah. And then, very quickly we, it was
And we got it
a
back together.
reevaluation.
Yeah, it's like, let's stick around here. Because the thing about Nashville is we can get anywhere, within 10 hours to a lot of places from around. And
Yeah.
And also, we need to put music out.
That's true.
And you can't do that if you're getting out on the road every weekend. That you have to recoup and sleep when you're home and spend time with family and all the things. So it's just, I like the idea of sometimes touring and then being home to record and
yes, and sleep.
and sleep. Yeah, we all need sleep so we can keep looking pretty.
David Lee Roth. I haven't slept since the '80s. You ever hear me that, right?
You can tell. You can tell.
So
I got a feeling next year I might do what you're talking about, though, and stay more local and just stay off the road more because it's just like you said, it's getting crazy.
But would you do just stand up more because it's just you and you don't have to bring a band and
I think, some of that, but I also think I'd probably compromise and end up doing venues that I normally wouldn't do, but because they're local.
right.
I've always taken a lot of pride in not, that I don't do the pizza joints and the Chinese joints. And, we always have done really good venues, but, who knows, maybe it's time to be up there next to the karaoke machine.
I don't know, man.
I'm trying to play the Taco Bell downtown.
Yeah, we have a Taco Bell downtown and they put a stage in it.
Yeah.
Kidding?
No shit.
Really?
Yeah, right off Broadway on 2nd. Mm-hmm.
Can you wait for me? I'll come down and do that with you.
Yeah, there we go. We'll make it.
Yeah.
We'll set up a tour of Broadway.
I do think the new economy, though, guys, is going to be great for my waistline. I can't afford it.
With the food shortages, we'll all be dropping weight. Like,
Yeah.
I went to the supermarket and when did bacon become the new lobster? I plea bargained down to turkey bacon.
oh, that's sacrilege.
Right? And I gave up red meat, not for the health part. I just can't afford it anymore.
Can't afford to get in the car and go pick it up.
Yeah, I have two boys that are 15. They're twins.
Really?
And they just consume food. I mean, after dinner, they're making another meal 2 hours later.
Oh, 15-year-old boys are just garbage disposals.
I know people say that, but you just don't know until you see it happen. And then always a snack, something is going in their
and they're
mouth.
bony.
Yeah, and they're tall and lean, It's just.
Guess what? My son's 15. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know what I did, though? You want a good trick? I got him a job in Boston at Beantown Pastrami, the pastrami place.
Get his own food.
Every day he makes himself, he calls it the Gary Marino sandwich, but it's like triple decker. It's like corned beef and pastrami and, the whole kitchen sink is in there. So he doesn't come home as hungry.
So my boys want to work at Chick-fil-A.
They do like them some Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, they say my pleasure. That's what the Chick-fil-A.
I can't remember.
My
Have
pleasure.
a blessed day.
My pleasure.
That's good chicken. I mean, you can be popping that like candy during your whole shift.
Damn right.
I think that's what they're thinking, but I don't think they allow you to eat.
Well, they'll let you take it with you. Plus, they got Sundays off to watch football.
Yeah.
No, you're right. They don't allow you to eat. That doesn't mean that you can't be like, sleight of hand magician in there.
That's true. They could be the rebels of Chick-fil-A. There's the two boys that are actually crazy.
I've worked at restaurants and I definitely would sneak food. So of course.
You couldn't pick a better mercenary than me to do that. One of my first jobs, right? I was 14. This is back during the Kish years, right, JB?
Right.
There was a Chinese restaurant around here that was sleepy, literally like wasn't doing any business. And the number one food critic in Boston goes in there, gives them an A+ rating. And overnight, they go from like decaf to speedball, Now they're turning away 250 people a night.
Wow.
So they went next door to the hairdressing place where my mother was getting her hair done. And they said, does anybody have any young boys who want jobs? And my mother said, oh, I got 2. So we go to work there. And they said to us,
why young boys?
What's that?
Why young boys?
Well, they need.
I don't know. Maybe that was the world back then.
Okay. That would be weird now, though, right? We need young boys. That'd be strange.
You raise a good point.
You sound like you're going straight to pedophilia and not sexual stuff there.
I don't mean to, but if somebody walked in and was like, I need 2 young boys. Anybody got 2 young boys they're willing to part with? Your mom's like, I do.
West Hollywood.
I'm teasing.
It was 1979, really,
Yeah.
Different times.
Yeah. So they hired us and they said, you guys, here's the job. And by the way, at the end of the night, you can hire anything you want off the menu, which was really nice. But I wasn't waiting to the end of the night. So we did something called the clip method. You know what the clip method is? So when Chinese waiters carry their food and they're walking through the swinging doors, there's a split second when, they're carrying the food behind them like this, and half the tray is in the back room with us when they're heading to the restaurant. So we do the clip method.
It's very quick. That's nice.
Nice.
Well, I mean, you got to sample everything to know what you want to get at the end of the night, to be fair.
You got to know your product line.
Somebody might ask questions. Yeah, for sure.
It's not called stealing. It's called sampling the product line.
It's called research, for God's sake.
I'd be a terrible influence on your sons, don't you think?
I lived on tortillas and cheese dip when I worked at Rio Bravo when I was 18.
Oh,
I
really?
lived on it. I just ate that. Yeah.
I worked at a pizza joint delivering, and we just take pepperoni and scoop it in the sauce and sprinkle cheese on it and just throw them down like that. Complete stoner joint, just
When I was pregnant, I would put pepperonis in the microwave for 20 seconds, like 50 of them. Yeah, and it tastes like it's on top of the pizza. Like if you pulled it off,
would burn a little bit.
Just if they get
up.
a little crispy and greasy. Yeah. Only when I was pregnant, though.
That's a good one. I never thought of that.
Being pregnant.
It does make
like you're picking it off the pizza.
Yeah, so they're already kind of pre-curled up and everything.
It's literally, if you do it, it's literally like you're grabbing pepperonis off of a pizza and putting it in your mouth without the cheese drizzling. Oh my God, I'm starving.
Well, what would stop you from cutting a little cheese and dropping it on top of the pepperoni? Nuking that too.
A little pepperoni bite right there.
Are we creating something right now?
Raelyn, it's a good thing we weren't an item. I could develop a weight problem.
You know what you should do, Raelyn? Drop a little cheese on there. We got some sauce over here. Just put a little of that on there.
Yeah.
Hell, let's put a crust down and make a pizza.
Here's a good story for you. After the Chinese joint, I went to work at a fish place around here called the Happy Haddock. Happy Haddock.
Okay.
Okay.
And they were famous for not only their fish, but they had paid big money for this delicious marinade that they did their steak tips and their ribs and their chicken wings in. I don't know what was in it. It was secret. They wouldn't tell you. But you marinated the stuff in these giant barrels. The meat went in like a giant gray barrel for days, and then it absorbed this red marinade, and it was like you met the Lord. It was unbelievable. So I was into cooking back then, and I kept asking the owners for can you share the recipe? They said, no, can't tell you. So I had this idea. I'm going to take a sample home in the kitchen, break it down in the laboratory, figure out what's in it, and then I'll recreate that at home, right? So at the end of my shift, I go into the walk-in refrigerator with a Ziploc bag, and I take the ladle and I fill the ladle, fill the plastic bag with this blood red marinade, and I stick it under my smock. Then I went out and I was waiting for my mom to pick me up. I'm like 15 at the time. She pulls up with a horrified look on her face. And I'm like, what's the problem? And I guess the bag had burst. So it looks like somebody machine gunned me right in the gut.
Just leaking from the front. The adrenochrome marinade.
It's in the book. That's all I'm telling you.
You're like sucking it off the shirt, try to figure out what it is.
Right.
But as a mother, imagine pulling up and your son stands up and he's got like a giant red stain like that.
Yeah, that's scary.
I was hardcore though. It's actually not that funny of a story in today's world, but back then it was funny.
Yeah, it's funny. Gary, thanks for doing this podcast with us. You're funny.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it. And guys, I love the band. We're going to get you up to Boston.
Yeah.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks, man.
And when you get down here, let us know, and we'll do another one of these in person, maybe.
And you can no longer say that drummers aren't funny. So there you go. We got proof right here.
It's ironic, because we've just had so many problems with drummers.
That's true.
Problems just we can't.
I do hear that. It's always the drummer, isn't it?
Well, they always get better gigs. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Well, if you want a funny drummer, I'm available. If you want a good drummer.
Well, we'll keep you in mind for our next acoustic gig because it seems like all we're doing is comedy on those things now. So.
Yeah. And we should get you guys both doing a little stand up with me and Rick and Donna, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. I'll do it. And I'm pretty sure I'm 97% sure I can talk him into doing it.
Yeah, we'll see. Hey man, it was nice to meet you and thanks for doing this.
Great to meet you guys.
We'll do it again sometime. All right.
Gary Marino is my favorite comedian.
Technically, he's not a comedian from what he said.
I know it felt weird to say it.
But anyway, he was great. I enjoyed that guy. Gotta check out his band. Gotta get up to Boston to see him. Anyway, enjoy your groceries.
Don't be an asshole.
I know your mama's name.
Enjoy your cigarette.